Rebecca's mind raced. He didn't seem aware that police were already here. He was still playing the intimidation game. Good. Keep him talking. Give the officers time to get into perfect position. She tried to swallow, finding her throat dry. I wouldn't risk my son's life. You said all copies, so yes, you get everything, but only once Brandon is free. Coleman sighed theatrically. This again? You're hardly in a position to bargain, Rebecca. I hold all the cards, your boy's life specifically. He signaled with a flick of his fingers. From behind Rebecca, the guard who had led her in stepped forward and roughly snatched the envelope and flash drive from her hands. He handed them to Coleman. Rebecca's heart thundered. This was a dangerous moment. Coleman would check the goods if he thought they were fake. But Simon's decoy was thorough. Coleman pulled out the papers first. They were printouts of innocuous corporate reports doctored to look like damning evidence at a glance. She saw his eyes scan the top page. There were keywords like transfer and bribe visible. His lips curved in satisfaction. Then he held up the flash drive. And this is everything else, Michael's insurance policy, the copies he made. Rebecca nodded. It's all there. Now let Brandon go and you and I can finalize this. Coleman smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Finalize? My dear, once I verify this is the real deal, there's nothing more to finalize, except perhaps tying up loose ends. Rebecca's pulse spiked. Loose ends. She and Brandon were exactly that to him. She took a half step forward, desperation creeping into her voice. Richard, you have what you want. Let me have what I want, my son, and we can walk away. You'll never see us again. We'll disappear. He studied her for a long moment. Tempting. But forgive me if I'm not inclined to leave witnesses and vengeful children behind. You know me better than that. He nodded to the masked man again. However, I am a man of my word, to an extent. So let's do this properly. You come take your son, and I will walk out with my insurance. He gestured to the drive and papers. Rebecca's stomach dropped. If she walked into arm's reach, what guarantee was there that he wouldn't just shoot them both? But she saw no other option. Brandon was inches from a gun. She glanced quickly at Brandon. His eyes were wide with alarm, likely guessing what Coleman intended. From her earpiece, a faint crackle sounded. Park's voice whispering, "Not yet, hold a little longer, team's almost set." She dared not respond or react. Coleman grew impatient. Well, or would you prefer I return your son to you in a body bag? Don't, Rebecca cried out, raising her hands. I'm coming. Her mind raced. They needed a distraction or signal for the police to intervene, but Coleman's man had a gun to Brandon. Any sudden move and he might pull the trigger reflexively. They needed that gun away from Brandon even for a second. Rebecca's eyes flickered to her son's. Brandon gave the barest nod and suddenly slumped in the masked man's grip, his body going limp. The man jerked in surprise, instinctively shifting his gun hand to grab Brandon's collar and hold him upright. Hey, no passing out, he growled, loosening the muzzle's pressure on Brandon's head for a moment as he tried to get a better hold. In that split second, Rebecca acted on pure maternal instinct and the plan that she sensed Brandon had initiated. She lunged forward as if to catch her son, putting herself between the gun and Brandon. Brandon! Oh, God! She screamed, feigning panic. Coleman barked, Stop her! And took a step back, momentarily away from the hostages, clutching the envelope and drive. But it was too late. That single moment of chaos was all the task force needed. In a blinding flash, crack, boom! A stun grenade detonated just outside the warehouse door, flooding the space with light and a concussive blast that made Rebecca's ears ring. Simultaneously, the overhead light winked out as Simon, monitoring from afar, killed the power. Darkness and pandemonium. The masked man holding Brandon shouted in surprise and flinched. his grip on the gun faltering. Brandon, who had only been play-acting at semi-consciousness, burst into action despite his bound hands. He threw himself sideways with all his might, crashing into the man's legs. They both went down hard, the gun clattering from the thug's hand and skidding across the concrete. Coleman cursed loudly. Muzzle flashes lit up the dark as one of his henchmen by the door fired blindly outward, only to be taken down by a precise single shot from a task force sniper perched in the rafters. The guard who had seized the files was blown back as a second flashbang exploded deeper in the warehouse, disorienting him completely. Rebecca scrambled on the ground, ears ringing, searching for Brandon. "Brandon!" she cried. "Mom!" He was there, just a silhouette in the dark, struggling to rise with his hands tied. Rebecca crawled toward him. She vaguely sensed figures rushing in, black-clad special forces with night vision goggles, weapons at the ready. A burst of green light from a laser sight danced past her. A flurry of gunshots popped off, sharp and deafening. Rebecca felt something tug at her sleeve. She didn't know if it was a bullet or debris. The masked thug had recovered enough to lunge for the fallen gun. As his fingers grasped it, an authoritative shout echoed, "Police, drop your weapons!" The thug fired wildly toward the voice. A split second later, 3 answering shots cracked in quick succession. The thug jerked and collapsed, the pistol slipping from his hand as he hit the floor. Rebecca got her arms around Brandon at last and pulled him behind a stack of crates for cover, cradling his head against her chest. "I've got you, baby, I've got you," she whispered, not even sure he could hear. Tears streamed down her face. He mumbled something against the tape over his mouth. Rebecca ripped it off gently. Brandon gasped, coughing. "Mom, you okay?" was his first raspy question. A strangled laugh of relief escaped her. Even now he worried about her. "I'm fine. Are you hurt badly?" Before he could answer, a flashlight beam swept over them. "Rebecca, Brandon," came Detective Parks's voice. She peeked out and saw Parks hustling toward them, weapon drawn, flanked by 2 task force operatives. Rebecca raised a hand to show they were there and not a threat. In the distance, by the warehouse entrance, there was a scuffle of bodies and another shout. "On the ground, get down," followed by a furious roar that she recognized as Coleman's voice. Rebecca held Brandon tight as Parks covered them, and the operatives moved past in pursuit of Coleman. Coleman had darted for the shadows when the stun grenades went off. Now, disoriented but driven by sheer will, he attempted to flee out a side door, the precious flash drive still clutched in one hand and a small pistol drawn in the other. He burst out into the cool night air behind the warehouse and nearly made it to the fence when a dark figure stepped into his path like an apparition. Jason. He had slipped away from the sedan in the confusion, sprinting toward the warehouses as soon as he saw the flashes and heard the firefight. Ignoring Detective Langa's shouted orders to stop, he couldn't sit by any longer. Now he stood in front of his father, blocking the way. His face was illuminated by the moonlight, and though it was pale with fear, there was determination in his eyes. "Dad, it's over," Jason said, voice trembling but audible. He held nothing in his hands, no weapon, but his stance was wide, trying to look larger than he was. Behind Richard Coleman, 2 task force members were closing in with rifles raised. Coleman's eyes widened at the sight of his son. "Jason, what the hell are you doing here?" For a moment, genuine shock and confusion broke through his composed facade. Jason swallowed. "Stopping you." Coleman's expression twisted from surprise to rage as realization struck. "It was you. You betrayed me." His voice shook with anger. "After everything I've done for you." "Done for me?" Jason shouted back, voice cracking. "You murdered Kendra's father. You tried to kill her brother. How could you? You're a monster." Tears glistened in Jason's eyes, his emotions pouring out. "I looked up to you, and this is who you are." Coleman's nostrils flared. He took a step toward Jason, raising the pistol. I did what I had to do for our family's future, for you, and now you side with them. Move, right, now. Jason stood his ground, though his knees felt weak. I won't. If you want to escape, you'll have to go through me, Dad. His voice softened, pleading. Please, just stop. Put down the gun. Don't make things worse. For an instant, Richard Coleman's face faltered, torn between paternal instinct and self-preservation. His gun wavered slightly. Jason, you have no idea what's at stake, he said, almost gentle. This is bigger than you or me. From around the corner of the warehouse, Detective Parks and 2 officers appeared, guns trained on Coleman. It's over, Coleman, Parks barked. Drop the weapon now. Coleman realized he was surrounded. His eyes darted, calculating. Slowly he crouched and set the pistol and the flash drive on the ground. The task force agents rushed forward, forcing him onto his knees and securing his hands behind his head with zip cuffs. Coleman didn't resist, but he stared at Jason with an expression of cold fury and heartbreak. As the officers pulled Coleman up to his feet, Jason took a shaky step forward. Dad, he began, voice small. Coleman looked at his son, and something in his gaze made Jason stop. You are no son of mine, Richard Coleman hissed, voice dripping with venom. I hope you're happy with the choice you made. There was a flicker of raw hurt in Coleman's eyes, quickly masked by a sneer. He straightened, regaining some composure even while restrained. Enjoy your victory, boy. It will be short-lived. They began to march Coleman toward the front of the building. As he was led past Jason, he paused, towering over the teenager for a final second. This isn't over, he said quietly, meant only for Jason to hear. There are others. You have no idea what you've started. Then an officer yanked him along, and Richard Coleman, the man who had cast such a long, dark shadow over all their lives, was taken away into the darkness toward the waiting police vehicles. Jason stood there trembling, tears silently spilling down his cheeks as he watched his father disappear in cuffs. He felt a hand on his shoulder, Detective Parks, looking at him not with judgment, but sympathy. You did good, kid, Parks said softly. You did the right thing. It didn't feel entirely good or right at that moment. Jason nodded numbly, wiping his face with the back of his sleeve. Meanwhile, inside the warehouse, Kendra had finally dashed in once the all-clear was given. She raced across the floor past subdued henchmen and officers until she found Rebecca and Brandon. They were surrounded by medics now. Someone had cut Brandon's bonds, and he was lying on a stretcher as an EMT checked his vitals and bandaged his bleeding arm. Kendra skidded to her knees beside him. Brandon, she sobbed, grabbing his hand. Brandon turned his head, wincing, and when he saw his sister, relief and a weak grin spread over his bruised face. Ken, you okay? He murmured. Kendra laughed through her tears. Am I okay, you idiot? You're the one on a stretcher. She squeezed his hand, careful of the IV a medic was inserting. Don't you ever do that to us again. Ever. Her voice wavered, breaking. He gave a slight nod. Not planning to, he whispered. Then his eyes fluttered and closed as the medic administered a painkiller injection. Kendra panicked for a second, but the medic smiled reassuringly. He'll be all right, the paramedic said. Exhaustion, dehydration, a mild concussion likely. The cut on his arm needs stitches, possibly a cracked rib or two, but nothing fatal. We'll take him to the hospital now. Rebecca, kneeling on the other side of the stretcher, covered her face with her hands, shoulders shaking with silent sobs of gratitude. They had done it. Brandon was alive, and in this moment, that was everything. Kendra leaned over and hugged her mom, and they held each other tightly for a long moment, both crying tears of joy and relief. As the medics prepared to move Brandon out, Kendra became aware of Jason approaching slowly from the rear entrance. His silhouette was hesitant. She gently released her mother and stood, meeting him a few steps away, out of earshot of the busy police. Under the faint glow of emergency lights the officers had set up, they faced each other. Jason looked devastated and relieved and frightened all at once. Kendra didn't say anything. She simply threw her arms around him, embracing him just as fiercely as she had her brother a moment ago. Jason hugged her back, clinging to her like a lifeline. "Thank you," Kendra whispered against his shoulder. "You saved us. You saved Brandon." Jason shook his head, pulling back enough to look at her. I almost messed everything up. I shouldn't have jumped in front of him out there. You were trying to help. You gave us the location. We'd be lost without that," Kendra insisted, wiping a tear from his cheek gently. She noticed a small bruise on his temple. He might have bumped something in the chaos. She brushed his hair aside softly. "Are you okay?" He gave a broken laugh. "I guess that depends on the definition of okay. My father basically disowned me while being carted off by police." His voice hitched, and Kendra realized his heart was breaking even as he'd done the right thing. "I know he's evil, I know it, but it still hurts." Kendra understood. Richard Coleman was his dad, an awful father figure perhaps, but the only one Jason had. She remembered her own pain when she lost her dad, even though he'd been nothing like Coleman. Gently, she took Jason's hand and led him a bit further from the noise, near an old forklift where they could speak privately. "He's going to prison, Jason," she said softly. "Probably for the rest of his life. He earned that. But he was wrong. You didn't betray him. He betrayed you. He betrayed your trust by lying about who he was. You just chose what was right." Her throat tightened. It was a brave choice. Not many people could do what you did. Jason looked at her with searching eyes. You're not mad at me for not telling you who he was earlier?" She gave a sad smile. "I was, at first. But I realize now you really didn't know what he'd done, and you proved whose side you're on." She squeezed his hand. "We wouldn't have Brandon back if it weren't for you. I'm not mad. I'm grateful. And I'm sorry I shut you out without explaining." Jason managed a slight smile in return. "I'd have probably done the same in your shoes. I'm just so sorry about everything he did. Your father, your family." He looked down, guilt-ridden. "Part of me feels responsible, even though I know I'm not him. Like I should apologize on his behalf." "You don't have to," Kendra said, stepping closer. "You're not him, Jason. You're better. And now, I hope you know you're not alone. You have us." At that, Jason did break down. A sob escaped him, and Kendra caught him in another hug as he trembled with emotion. She held him, murmuring comforting words. After a moment, he steadied, and they stood with their arms around each other, watching as the police brought the last of Coleman's henchmen out in handcuffs and cleared the scene. By the time the adrenaline had ebbed and everyone was ready to leave, the east horizon was glowing with the earliest hint of dawn. Wednesday night had bled into Thursday morning, and the nightmare was over. Or at least this chapter of it. Brandon was loaded into an ambulance. He'd woken briefly to grumble that he didn't need a stretcher, to which the paramedics and Rebecca shushed him and told him to lie still. Rebecca rode with him, holding his hand all the way. Kendra and Jason followed in the back of a police car that served as their taxi, and Detective Parks, finished with the immediate incident, decided to accompany them to the hospital to handle any necessary statements and keep an eye on things. As they drove through the quiet pre-dawn streets, Kendra finally felt the weight lifting off her shoulders. She leaned against Jason, exhaustion catching up, and he gently draped an arm around her. She closed her eyes just for a moment, listening to the low murmur of the police radio in front and Jason's steady heartbeat beside her. The city around them was waking up to a new day, none the wiser about the life and death drama that had unfolded in the darkness before dawn. Later that morning, Johannesburg General Hospital. Sunlight filtered through the drawn curtains of the hospital room, casting soft patterns on the tile floor. Brandon lay propped up in bed, looking far more human after a thorough cleaning, 16 stitches in his arm, and some much-needed rest, aided by pain medication. A nasal cannula provided him with a bit of oxygen, and a heart monitor beeped steadily. The purple and blue bruises on his face and the bandage around his head were stark evidence of his ordeal, but he was alive and even smiling weakly at a joke Jason had just told. Rebecca sat at Brandon's bedside, her hand in his. She looked like she never wanted to let go. Kendra sat on the other side, and Jason stood nearby with 2 paper cups of vending machine coffee, one of which he had given to Rebecca. Detective Parks had finished taking a preliminary statement from Brandon about the kidnapping and left the family to have some peace, promising to return later for more formalities and updates on charges. Brandon's voice was still a bit hoarse as he squeezed his mother's hand. "So you really pointed a gun at that thug's knee and threatened to shoot him?" He was asking her in disbelief. Rebecca gave a modest shrug. "Mother's instincts," she said with a faint grin. "I wasn't about to let him keep secrets when you were missing." Brandon chuckled, then winced at the ache it caused in his ribs. "Remind me never to get on your bad side." Kendra laughed softly, brushing a lock of hair off Brandon's forehead. It felt so good to laugh. "You basically missed Mom going full-action hero last night. She was amazing." Rebecca blushed but looked proud and relieved. "I'd do it again in a heartbeat for you two, but hopefully I'll never have to." Jason cleared his throat. "Actually, you all were pretty amazing. I've never seen such guts." He looked at Kendra and Brandon. "Both of you. Brandon, you basically tried to fight your way out of an armed kidnapping. And Kendra, you were ready to face down my father despite everything." Kendra gave a little shake of her head. "It's not bravery. I was terrified the whole time. We just didn't have a choice." Brandon's eyes shifted to Jason. He had only learned the full story once he woke up in the hospital, how Jason had turned over the location and data, defying his father. Brandon extended his hand across the bed. "Jason, right? We didn't really get to meet properly before." His voice was sincere. "Thank you, I owe you one. Big time." Jason took Brandon's hand and shook it. I'm really glad you're okay. And I'm sorry my father put you through that." Brandon gave a wry smile. "Well, like Kendra said, you're not him. You proved that. Takes a lot to stand up to your old man. I appreciate it, man." Kendra watched the two of them, her heart swelling. In the span of a day, Jason had gone from someone she wasn't sure she could ever speak to again to someone deeply enmeshed in their lives for the better. It was bittersweet. He had lost his father in a sense, but maybe he had gained something too. A cause and a kind of new family or allies in them. A soft knock interrupted their conversation. It was Detective Parks peeking in. "Hope I'm not disturbing, just wanted to share a bit of news." He stepped inside, smiling. "Coleman's in custody at Sun City Prison, denied bail. We've already got federal investigators and the Hawks swarming this case. The evidence from the file, thanks to Simon's copies and Jason's contributions," he nodded at Jason, "is more than enough to indict Coleman on a slew of charges. Kidnapping, conspiracy to commit murder, actual murder for Michael Roberts, corruption, racketeering, you name it." Rebecca let out a breath of deep relief. "Thank God." Parks held up a finger, though. "There's more. That network he was part of, it's already unraveling. Names in those documents include a high-ranking politician and another corporate CEO. We've got teams moving to arrest those individuals today. It's going to be all over the news by this evening. A real corruption bust wide open." Kendra felt a surge of vindication. Finally, her father's evidence would see the light of day. "They won't get away this time." Parks shook his head confidently. "Not this time. Not with this media spotlight. And not with key witnesses like you all. Actually," he smiled at Kendra and Jason, "we might need you two to eventually give testimony or statements about how this all came to be, especially Jason with the tablet. It will add a compelling narrative to the case, shows even Coleman's own son recognized the wrongdoing, but we can discuss that later. Main thing is, you're safe, and justice is in motion. Brandon sighed, easing back onto the pillows. He looked content. Dad can finally rest in peace, huh? Rebecca stroked his hair. He'd be so proud of you, of both of you, she added, eyes drifting to Kendra, and by extension to Jason. Kendra felt warmth in her chest and a sting of tears in her eyes. She looked at the ceiling, silently thanking her father. "We did it, Dad, we did it." Detective Parks took his leave after a few more kind words, allowing the family to recover. He made Jason promise to come by the station later to formally log the tablet evidence and ensure he had protection or a place to stay. Since home might not be safe or welcoming now, Rebecca immediately offered that Jason could stay with them, which he gratefully accepted. As Parks left, he bumped into someone at the door. Emily, Kendra's friend from school, who had come as soon as she heard the news from local media. "I hope it's okay, I just wanted to see Kendra," Emily explained timidly to the detective. Parks chuckled and gestured for her to enter, then closed the door behind her. Emily's eyes were wide as saucers as she rushed in. "Oh my gosh, Kendra," she cried, taking in the scene. Brandon in bed, Kendra with circles under her eyes, Rebecca and the newcomer boy, Jason, all there. "I heard about the kidnapping on the news, and then they said a businessman was arrested, and I put two and two together. Are you all right?" Kendra stood to hug Emily. "We're okay," she said, smiling. "It was a crazy night." Emily huffed, tears of relief in her eyes. "Crazy night? Girl, that's the understatement of the century. You could have told me your family was being hunted by actual bad guys." She smacked Kendra's arm lightly, scolding out of love. "I would have understood all the secrecy." Kendra laughed a little guiltily. "I'm sorry, I was just trying to keep everyone safe. It was hard to know who to trust." Emily nodded, then glanced curiously at Jason. "And I see trust has been sorted out on some fronts." She recognized him, obviously. Jason gave a small wave, looking a bit sheepish. "Hi, Emily." Emily grinned, a hint of her usual gossip-hungry self. "Hi, Jason. Glad you're not actually a jerk. In fact, from what I gather, you're kind of the hero of the hour." Jason blushed. "I wouldn't say that." Brandon chimed in from the bed, smirking. "He's definitely a hero. Save my butt." Emily's eyes sparkled. "Well then, Kendra, you sure know how to pick your friends." She squeezed Kendra's hand. "Seriously, I'm so happy this turned out okay. You guys, you're like some action movie family. What are you gonna do now?" The room fell thoughtful. What would they do now? The immediate danger was gone, but life wasn't just going to snap back to simple normalcy. There'd be a legal process, trials perhaps, media attention on the whistleblower's brave family, and beyond that, healing, learning to live without fear again. Rebecca answered, smiling gently at her children. "Now we live, Emily. We live without running or hiding. We mourn those we lost and celebrate the fact that we're still here. And," she added, looking at Jason, "we make sure the truth comes out completely." That was Michael's wish, that these people answer for what they've done. Kendra took Jason's hand and interlaced her fingers with his. "We're going to finish what our parents started. Expose all of it," she agreed. Jason nodded, meeting her eyes with a determined gaze. Brandon raised an eyebrow, teasing despite his hoarse voice. "I think I've had enough excitement. I'll cheer you on from the sidelines for the next part, if you don't mind." Everyone chuckled. Rebecca patted his shoulder. "You've earned a break, sweetheart." Emily clapped her hands as if concluding a meeting. "All right, Operation Kick Villains' Butts is accomplished, and Phase 2. Save the World is set to begin, I see." Kendra felt a lightness in her heart at her friend's playful summary. Yes, that's what it felt like. For the first time in a long time, the future was open and hopeful. They could actually plan beyond just surviving. A gentle knock came again, and a nurse peeked in. "Sorry, but the patient needs to rest now. You can visit more in a few hours." They all took turns gently hugging Brandon, who winced and then insisted it didn't hurt that much. Kendra and Jason were last. Brandon gripped Jason's forearm firmly. "You take care of my sister, yeah?" he said quietly, but loud enough that Kendra overheard and groaned. "Brandon." Jason nodded solemnly. "I will." Kendra rolled her eyes with a smile and leaned down to kiss her brother's forehead. "Love you, dummy." "Love you too, pest," he replied with a grin. As they filed out of the room, Rebecca said she needed to make some phone calls, likely to relatives or perhaps to sort out the mess of the last day. Emily excused herself to head to school and promised to catch up with Kendra later. "I expect full debrief over ice cream," she insisted. That left Kendra and Jason stepping out into the hospital courtyard for a breath of fresh air. The morning was mild and sunny, birds perched on the courtyard trees, chirping as if it were any ordinary beautiful day. Kendra tilted her face up to the sun, closing her eyes and letting its warmth wash over her. Jason stood beside her, close enough that their arms touched. "So," he said softly, "life is normal now, huh?" Kendra opened her eyes and looked at him. "I don't even know what normal is anymore, but I'd like to find out." Jason smiled. "Well, for starters, you won't have to hide who you are at school. And Vanessa is going to have a fit when she hears all this," he joked. Kendra laughed. "Oh, goodness, that's the least of my concerns, but yeah, she's going to be furious that the drama didn't involve her." They both chuckled, which felt wonderful. A comfortable silence stretched, the weight of what they'd been through hanging in the air. Kendra turned to face Jason fully. "What about you? Where will you—" She trailed off, not sure how to ask about his family situation now. Jason looked down. "I don't know. Home doesn't feel like home. My mom, and we haven't been close in years since my parents divorced. She lives in Cape Town. Maybe I'll go stay with her. Or if it's okay, your mom said maybe I could stay at your place for a bit, at least until things settle." "Of course it's okay," Kendra said immediately. "You're part of this now. She hesitated, then forged on. "You're important to me." His green eyes met hers, earnest and warm. "You're important to me, too. You and your family. You saved me as much as I helped save you." He swallowed. "I lost a father last night, or at least the illusion of the one I thought I had. But I gained something better. People I care about who do the right thing." He gently took both of her hands in his. "I gained you." Kendra felt her cheeks flush, but she didn't look away. "We're pretty much stuck with each other now, huh? I mean, after bringing down a criminal empire together and all." Jason laughed lightly. "I wouldn't have it any other way." Impulsively, Kendra leaned forward and kissed his cheek, then rested her forehead against his. They stood there in that quiet corner of the courtyard, holding each other, both finally allowing themselves to feel safe. As they broke apart, Kendra spotted Detective Parks exiting the hospital lobby, likely heading out on another mission related to the case. He saw them and gave a little wave. "You two take care. We'll be in touch," he called. "The city owes you a debt, even if they don't know it yet." After he left, Jason turned to Kendra. "I guess we should get some rest too. You've been up all night." "Yeah, but I feel too wired to sleep." She exhaled and looked up at the clear sky. Somewhere out there, maybe on the news right now, the story was breaking. Corrupt mining executive arrested in whistleblower case. Hostage freed in daring police raid. It all felt larger than life. Jason followed her gaze. "Penny, for your thoughts?" She smiled. "Just thinking about how this started with us wanting to just live quietly, and now we might be minor celebrities without meaning to." He nudged her. "Well, if anyone deserves recognition, it's your mom. And your dad, for what he gathered. And you and Brandon." Kendra shook her head. "It's not about fame, I just want the truth out. After that, maybe people will leave us alone. We can actually stay in one place, finish school, go to university. Normal stuff. Normal sounds pretty nice, Jason agreed, then grinned. Although I have a feeling you and I might get bored with normal after all this excitement. We make a pretty good team, you know. Perhaps we'll find some way to keep doing good, less dangerously, one hopes, Kendra chuckled. We'll see about that. For now, I'll settle for homework and hangouts instead of stakeouts and hostage rescues. She looped her arm through his. They began walking back inside to find Rebecca and perhaps catch a nap in the family lounge while Brandon slept. As they walked, Kendra glanced at Jason thoughtfully. Did you catch what your dad said to you when they took him away about there being others? Jason nodded, face somber. Yeah, I've been thinking about it. He's not wrong. That file has other names and some might try to go to ground or retaliate. He looked at her seriously. We have to be careful. Just because he's behind bars doesn't mean the fight is over. Kendra squeezed his arm. I know, but we'll handle it together. No more secrets, no more running. We'll shine a light on all of them. Her eyes steeled with resolve even as her body felt drained. Like you said, a team. He smiled. Team Kendra and Jason, secret agents of truth? She laughed. Maybe not too secret, hopefully. But yeah. They reached the waiting area near Brandon's room and found Rebecca there on the phone updating a relative. She waved and mouthed, I'll be just a minute. Kendra watched her mother, noting the relief in her posture, the return of light in her eyes. It felt like ages since she'd seen her mom not weighed down by fear. Jason gently took Kendra's hand again. You know, he said softly, we never did get to go on that date we talked about. Thanks to all this chaos. Kendra raised an eyebrow, then smiled brightly. The fact he was even bringing that up now after everything made her heart flutter with an innocent happiness that seemed almost out of place in such a serious moment, but was oh so welcome. You're right, we owe ourselves a proper night out. Maybe once things calm down. A movie? Dinner? Jason nodded. It's a date. This time, no villains allowed. No villains, no explosions, no high-speed chases, she agreed, giggling. Rebecca hung up her call and approached them, catching the tail end of that. That sounds like a lovely plan, she said, surprising them. She had an amused twinkle in her eye. Clearly, she had no objection to the bond forming between Kendra and Jason. If anything, she looked grateful for it. Kendra felt a little bashful, but mostly just content. She looped her other arm through her mother's. Come on, Mom, let's go sit down. Maybe snooze a bit until Brandon wakes up again. They settled in the lounge chairs, exhaustion finally creeping in as adrenaline waned. Jason sat beside Kendra, who leaned her head on his shoulder. Rebecca took the next chair, keeping a watchful but at ease eye on them. As Kendra drifted, she thought about the road ahead. There would be legal battles and likely media attention. She'd have to tell the story of what happened, maybe in court. Jason would have to testify about his father's crimes. It wouldn't be easy. And those other names, HL and DS from her father's notes, who knew what challenges bringing them down might entail. But she wasn't afraid. Not anymore. Their family had faced the worst night of their lives and come through intact. They had allies now, Detective Parks and his colleagues, Simon, even the press potentially on their side. And Kendra had Jason by her side, someone who understood her pain and shared her resolve. In her half-sleep haze, Kendra recalled a memory of her father, Michael. She was little, maybe 6, and scared of the thunderstorm rattling their windows one night. Her dad had sat by her bed holding her hand and told her, You're stronger than you think, Ken. Don't let fear steal your future. Storms pass and the sun always comes back out. She felt the sun on her face now and smiled. The storm had passed. And though there might be more storms to come, she wouldn't let fear rule her anymore. Whatever happened next, whatever battles remained to be fought, they would face them head-on. Nowhere to hide, that was truer than ever, but now it was the bad guys who had nowhere to hide from the truth. As for Kendra and her family, they didn't need to hide anymore either. They could step into the light again, scars and all, and live. Together they would heal and carve out the peace they so dearly deserved, ready for whatever new mystery or adventure life might throw their way in the future. And with that comforting thought, Kendra finally allowed her eyes to fully close, drifting into the deepest, most peaceful sleep she'd had in years, her head resting against Jason's shoulder, dreaming of a brighter tomorrow, the end, or perhaps a new beginning. Thank you for watching this story on Afro Tales TV. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up, leave us a comment, and share with friends and family. We have more beautiful stories coming your way, so subscribe and stay tuned. See you in the next one.